Oh God, Dane.
Hello and welcome to Who Is Best, the show where I look at and take games and give you choices, and rate those choices in a tier list. Persona 3 Reload's episode Aegis DLC was recently released, and with that, I can finally get to our tier list. Persona 3 holds a big place in my heart, as it was one of the first games I remember following from the announcement trailer all the way to release. This game changed RPG history in more ways than one. The remake is everything I dreamed it would be, so I hope you're all ready to answer the question, who is best in this absolute RPG gem? Now, ranking will take in a few considerations. As always, we'll be looking at stats and abilities. We'll also be taking into account the new mechanic, Theurgy, which is more or less a limit break with character-specific requirements in order to charge the meter. Now, there was a lot of balancing done to fix some of the skewed characters from the original, but one thing has not changed. And that is that the MC is absolutely busted and doesn't even compare to the other party members. Because of this, I'll be leaving him out of the ranking. I'll also be considering each party member's usefulness in the DLC episode Aegis. Everyone but Aegis, as she is a god of god tier. She's possibly better than the MC, so that really won't be taken into account. If you love RPG content, why don't you consider subscribing and checking out our benefits for Patreon members. Also, stick around till the end for a bonus list. Let's start with the tier. Shinjiro is a temporary character in the title and as such finds himself at the bottom of the list. But that doesn't mean he isn't good. Shinjiro joins the party at a much higher level than your other party members, and by spamming his bloody charge and keeping his HP below 50%, you will be able to then spam his Theurgy for boss wiping damage. Unfortunately, he's only around for one chapter and is not available in episode Aegis. The low tier. Junpei. When I played the game, Junpei was shut up. Junpei is consistently inconsistent in both the base game and in episode Aegis. Sure, he has the potential to do some of the most damage of nearly any character aside from Akihiko, but this is heavily RNG dependent. Junpei's ability to buff his crits is nice, and if the player's lucky and connects their attacks and also crits, then you'll be able to abuse his Theurgy. But here's the catch. When considering all other party members, he just isn't optimal. Aegis does slightly less physical damage, but she's tanky and consistently hits. Akihiko can do more damage and does it consistently. Even Koromaru is a better choice because of his mixture of damage and support. In the end, Junpei isn't dependable enough to land any higher. Next on the low tier is Mitsuru. Mitsuru was my best character. Shut up. Mitsuru, all things considered, was nerfed from the original game. She loses Ice Amp and her healing spell, which is crazy all things considered. She's a single target ice magic DPS and debuffer. Now, if she can hit with her debuffs, then she instantly becomes god tier. Marin Karin, Eerie Sound, and Tentarafu are all devastating in a fight. That is, if the enemy isn't immune. Unfortunately, most bosses in this title are immune to those spells, meaning that Mitsuru's Rakunda debuff will be her only means of charging her Theurgy. Her high magic stat and single target ice damage does pair well with Yukari's concentrate Theurgy. So in summary, as long as the enemy isn't immune to ice damage or her debuffs, and you aren't in need of AoE damage, Mitsuru is great. In episode Aegis, Mitsuru's usefulness is slightly better as debuffs are needed for the DLC's difficulty, but her faults are about the same. The mid-tier. Ken got the second biggest glow-up in Persona 3. Where he was practically useless in the first game, now he finds himself as the second best support in the game. Ken has the Karn spells, which reflect physical and magical damage. He has Dekaja, so he can strip enemies of their buffs. And if you manage his regenerative SP, keeping it under 50%, you can utilize his Theurgies, including his second Theurgy, which fully heals and revives the entire party. Now, in the base game, you'll rarely use this, but in episode Aegis, Ken becomes one of the most important characters in the game. Had he been given the ability to cure status elements, he might have landed in the top of the god tier. The final member of the mid tier is Aegis. There are a few issues holding Aegis from being truly magnificent. First, she no longer gets God Hand, the strongest physical skill in the game, which makes her damage potential worse than the original, and her skill kit sucks in the first half of the game. With all that being said, Aegis is practically unkillable. She's the party's greatest tank, and with Dukunda can strip enemies of buffs as well. Her passive buffs her physical skill, which almost makes up for the loss of God Hand, and she possesses the two best party buffs in the game, increasing the party's attack and defense. In episode Aegis, Aegis is the best character, possibly in Persona history. She's a wildcard character, much like the other MCs, which can equip any Persona in the game. Like I said, considering this would shoot her up to the God tier, despite her mid-tier uselessness in the base game. The top tier. Koromaru may be the single most surprising change in the remake of Persona 3. Unlike the original title, he's extremely useful and one of the best party members in the game. First and foremost, Koromaru has Debilitate, which is the best debuff in the series. On top of this, he has a Theurgy that casts Charge on the entire party, buffing their next attack. He also has Revolution, which increases critical chance. This pairs well with Aegis, Akihiko, and especially Junpei. In fact, the only way Junpei becomes viable is if paired with Koromaru. Koromaru's biggest faults are his Theurgy Charge requirement, which only increases if he's at 50% health, and how quickly he burns through SP. Now, in episode Aegis, Koromaru does get nerfed slightly, which is a shame, but he's still very useful for mob battles and can be viable if given the right strategy. The God tier. First on the God tier is Metis. This is cheating just a little bit, as she's not a party member in the base game. But unlike Shinjiro, she is around for the entirety of episode Aegis, and my goodness is she busted. She has no elemental or physical weaknesses. She has one of the best skill kits of any party member that isn't an MC. These include multiple elemental attacks, physical attacks, and support skills. The only downside is her Theurgy Charge and how she struggles against the final boss. But that being said, she's just too insane not to place in the God tier. Next up on the God tier is Akihiko. Sure, he's not nearly as busted as he is in the original title, but he's still amazing enough to land in the God tier. Akihiko is both a physical attacking beast with the best physical skill in the game, God Hand, and a magical DPS as well. He's less useful as a support than a DPS, but still has some useful skills for buffing the party. What really sets this guy apart is completely abusing Theurgy Charge. Akihiko's Theurgy will charge each turn that he has a buff on himself. So as long as you or your party members cast a buff on him at the beginning of the battle, he'll consistently be charging his Theurgy. If he or another party member also casts a buff on him, he'll get an additional charge. This makes his Theurgy one of the easiest to spam in the entire game. Oh, and I forgot his absolutely busted passive, Buff Amp, which increases the effectiveness of any buff applied on him. This means that given an attack buff, Akihiko can reach the highest damage numbers in the game. In episode Aegis, Akihiko is still just as broken, meaning that he'll probably be a required party member for both the base game and episode Aegis. And speaking of required party members, the final member of the God tier and top of this list is the goddess of support, Yukari. I'm not sure what the devs were thinking here, but Yukari's kit is so broken it isn't even funny. This mainly comes down to her Theurgy Charge and her second Theurgy. You see, Yukari's Theurgy gauge charges whenever you heal a party member, so spamming healing spells not only make your party unkillable, but increases your Theurgy gauge as well. Her second Theurgy is a party-wide concentrate spell, increasing all magic damage. In a team of Akihiko, Mitsuru, and a magic-built MC, this is devastating. Oh, and if spamming healing spells sounds expensive, don't worry, as her passive skill decreases the cost of healing by 75%. Now that's just one of her uses. Another is Mepatra, which removes status effects on the party. Mepatra becomes a must-have for episode Aegis, as enemies cast debuffs relentlessly in this title. Yeah, her healing isn't quite as useful in episode Aegis, but Mepatra makes up for it. In the end, Yukari is the single best party member in the game, period. And that's our list. How do we do? Who's your favorite party member and why? Thank you to all my Patreon members for their support, and if you would like to request your own tier list, consider becoming a pro member today for only $5 a month. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all later. Bonus round. Best dressed C's members, go! Number 10, Mitsuru's summer garb. Number 9, the MC's butler outfit. Number 8, Yukari's maid outfit. Number 7, Akihiko's winter garb. Number 6, Ken's swimwear. Number 5, Mitsuru's sexy armor. Number 4, Yukari's summer garb. Number 3, Mitsuru's swimwear. Number 2, Fuka's sexy armor. And number 1, Junpei's C's outfit.